Welcome to the sixth reading in inverted commas tonight from Indie Author Week UK 2025 and Wine and a Book. And so I get to wish you your health and all of those sort of things, and bottoms up. Yeah. So tonight's going to be complete chaos, because it is complete chaos. It's not it's sort of a reading. It's a sort of draft thing. The book that I'm working on is on the churches of the South Downs National Park, and there are 273 churches, chapels, and ruined places of worship, and I'm doing them all. We visited them over a period of 10 years, from 2014. Well, a bit more than 10 years now, isn't it? 11. And it's fascinating. We've seen some wonderful things. The way that I selected the ones that we visited was looking for the plus signs that there are on the 1 to 25,000 maps. And I did the selection in 2014. In those days, the government website called Magic had the 1 to 10,000 mapping, and places of worship also had plus signs. And it turns out that Jehovah's Witnesses don't like the plus signs because they see them as crosses. Most of us don't, because the cross is taller. But that means that I've missed out the Kingdom Halls. So that's going to sort of go in at the end, because it's interesting that they didn't like the plus signs for the places of worship. So it makes the point. Nonconformism is fun, and I've been thinking of it as like minestrone soup. And that was quite fun, because I got 1.4, I've now got 1.5 thousand views for the little taster short that I did last week on minestrone soup of nonconformism. And I think there might have been there must be something fashionable about looking up recipes for minestrone soup. And apparently there's some politics lurking as well, isn't there? Nonconformist politics. Right, so if anybody has any actual knowledge about when, what, where and how nonconformist descent and the beginnings, middles and whatevers of Baptists, Quakers, Methodists, different sorts of Methodists, it'd be lovely to have some information. I'm hoping to publish the book in September or October this year. It's getting close, but there's plenty of time. Well, there's time. So, nonconformist chapels. Getting to grips with the range of nonconformist chapels, even in the small area of the South Downs National Park, compared to the nation as a whole, has proved quite the head-scratcher, and looking for simple dates for the differing denominations has remained so. It turns out that this is the equivalent of trying to establish the recipe for minestrone soup through going through the contents in the bowl, although later discovering that some of the ingredients have got blended during the creation of the meal. And I have found a minestrone soup recipe that recommends blending, so it does happen. Many of the ingredients of nonconformism in dissenters have also been blended or given different names, depending on which century things all started off. I doubt if anyone can truly get to the bottom of it all. It turns out that a lot of individual personalities and personality clashes are also not to be ignored. According to Google's AI, The first group to secede from the Church of England around 1650 were the Quakers, or originally known as the Religious Society of Friends. The preacher who inspired them was called George Fox. However, the earliest General Baptist Church was apparently founded around 1611, which may have been from continental influence, but the law required attendance at a parish church until the Act of Tolerance of 1689. This was why people didn't marry outside their religious group without severe resistance. In the mid-18th century, there was a schism as Unitarians became part of the picture within the Baptist Church. Into the minestrone goes unheard of titles such as, more tongue twisting, Arianism, Socinianism, Caffinites after a preacher called Matthew Caffin, Latitudinarian, Eutychian, Nicodemism, as well as the Methodists under John Wesley, who began as separate, apparently, again, I don't know, only from 1791 on his death. The complex soup being personality driven. George Whitefield and the Countess of Huntingdon began more linked to the Calvinist Baptists and for only the chosen to be saved. The Wesleys, John and Charles, had a wider view of possibilities, which was attractive to many soldiers, and this was one of the ways how Wesleyan Methodism was to spread across the South during and following the Napoleonic Wars from 1793. Wasn't the only, but it was significant. Titles I know of include Presbyterian, Congregationalist, Baptist, Calvinist, Methodist, Unitarian, Quaker, Plymouth Brethren, English Moravian, Huguenot, Sandemanian, I've popped that in because that's a family thing, Ebenezer Strict in particular, and Jehovah's Witnesses I've put in there too. They're 20th century. So now I'm going to do a few little extracts on some of the more interesting stories for some of the, well, it's not some of the more interesting, it's basically it's the ones I've got at the moment. It's not the only ones I've got, it's the ones I've got to hand. Yeah, sorry. So this is in Lewes, the Jara Chapel and Sunday School, which is near the Coalfield Tunnel. It's now the Lewes Free Presbyterian Church. The chapel was built by Jenkins in 1805 after he had fallen out with his congregation as preacher in the Countess of Huntingdon's chapel on Chapel Street. It's long gone now. It was that was demolished in 1880. It was a Free Calvinist chapel until 1998, when the Free Presbyterian Church of Ulster, which was Ian Paisley's denomination, took it over. The orientation is odd because the entrance is pointing towards the Coalfield Tunnel. And that's explained because the original layout was of little streets rather than all the weird big 1970s, 1960s, 70s big road layouts imposed going up above them since then. The Countess of Huntingdon came from Leicester and lived from 1707 to 1791, and she was called Selina Hastings. Through her life, she constructed 64 chapels and was one of 21 women who supported the Foundling Hospital in London. After her husband died in 1746, she was attracted to Methodism. I'm not sure if that was if that had escaped the church or not at that point, and founded the Countess of Huntingdon's Connection, which was Calvinistic within Methodism, in spite of the fact that John Wesley was a friend and correspondent of hers. Also in Lewes is the Westgate Chapel, which is up on the way out of Lewes towards the prison. It's an independent Christian chapel, and it was turned from the house dates to 1583, built on the ancient Norman town wall. And in 1687, it was turned into an independent chapel that was registered in 1700. Previously, it had been a secret meeting place for Elizabethan nonconformists, and also during the Civil War, until the law changed in 1687 with the license for Westgate coming in 1700. Reverend Thomas Walker Horsfield, author of the History, Antiquities and Topography of Sussex in 1835, was the minister at Westgate from 1817 to 1827, when political uncomfortableness and financial problems meant he moved to Thornton. Tom Paine was also living in Bull House, which was next to the chapel, before he went off to America and have all his influence over there. He appears in the book under the St. Michael's Church, which is just down the road, and the one that he attended. Again, Lewes, Friends Meeting House, Quaker Meeting House. In 1784, the Lewes Quakers moved from where they had been for the previous 100 years, founded in 1655 with a visit from George Fox, the preacher that inspired it. This building is partly on top of the original burial ground. The previous building had been owned by a Thomas Snashfold, great name, and left to them, but it was next to a slaughterhouse, so hence the decision to move. There was also a cottage added adjoining it in 1801. The United Reformed Church in Alfriston was inspired by preaching from George Gilbert from Heathfield, who inspired dissenters at the Market Cross in Alfriston, and they opened their congregational chapel in 1801, which it remained until becoming a United Reformed Church in 1972, which was one attempt at dealing with all of the minestrone soup of things, but not all of them wanted to be part of the URC, so it closed as a regular church in 2009 and is just above the green and away from the River Crooksmere. Then the Old Meeting House and Unitarian and Free Church in Ditchling. It has a seating for 50, and I didn't put in the bit about the wonderful story to do with that, so that's a bit I've got to remember that. It was built for the Chatfields, and originally it was congregational, and then when Unitarianism became popular, the congregation decided to be Unitarian rather than congregational, and there were some Congregationalists that flounced off in a fit of pique and made themselves their own chapel up at Wivelsfield, which is, I think, still there. It's sort of tucked away, but it's outside the South Downs National Park, so I've not visited it. The chapel in Twyford is now United Reformed Church, and in the planned village of South Twyford, it's down a quiet side street with red brick and slate-clad Methodist. It was a Methodist chapel, and it sits unostentatiously amongst the surrounding houses and garages. The road, the Drove, is a historic route down to the River Itchen, and there is even the Itchen Navigation Canal. And the chapel in East Meon, or there's I think there were 3 chapels in East Meon. And East Meon will figure quite prominently on Sunday, when I'm going to be talking about the differing sorts of characters in the vicars and rectors. And the rector in East Meon in the 1830s was really quite a shocker. So following the arrival of the shocker, that was the Reverend Thomas Cook Kemp to Eastmerean Church in 1826, there seems to have been a surge in dissent in Eastmerean. It was an era of dissent countrywide, so all blame cannot be laid at the notorious pluralists' door, but the timing of their beginnings is notable. One of the reasons for the increase in dissent was the fact that pews had to be paid for to sit in them, and if you didn't have a lot of money, then paying for the pew was tough, as you were also paying for other things to do with the church as well. And this is where the chapels started to build up. The Calvinist Baptists had a chapel from 1833 to about 1900, following on from an earlier presence in Halley Street, later called Chapel Street, from 1831, mentioned in 1851 in the census and 1855 in the Post Office Directory. The Independent Chapel existed by 1855 until it became a church in 1864. The Primitive Methodist Chapel dated from 1867 to 1987, when it was converted to residential. But the members had prior to 1867 been meeting in private houses well before that, following their permission to do so in 1828. And the last one is a chapel in Ditchling. Ditchling has St Margaret's Church, the Quaker Chapel, the Unitarian Chapel, and also the Emmanuel Centre. And the Emmanuel Centre is a shared chapel between the Beacon Parish and the Point Church of Burgess Hill. There has been a place of worship in South Street in Ditchling since 1904, and this was called the Emmanuel Chapel before, and was run by the Brethren denomination, which is that the Plymouth Brethren, I hope. Some older residents remember the old tin tabernacle, as the original building was nicknamed. That hall was replaced by the present pretty brick building in 1973. It's got a lovely atmosphere inside. So don't you can't tell a chapel by its cover. Worship services continued until 2017 for the Tin Tabernacle congregation, but it had reduced to about 5, and it's now leased shared between the Beacon Parish of Church of England and the Point Church of Burgess Hill. So that's the sort of taster of the smorgasbord of chapels in Hampshire and Sussex, in the South Downs National Park, and I'm still trying to sort my head out over it. And if anybody has any extra information about when the Quakers started, when the Wesleyans started officially as Methodists outside the Church of England, any nonconformists, the Ebenezer Strict particulars, and all of that. So yes, so thank you very much for watching, and I will wish you a very good evening.